Hello. Hi, everyone. We are here live on our Tuesday reading. And as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching this live stream. I hope that everyone can enjoy what we're going to read today. Um, Nicholas is not going to be here today. He is having some personal things to be doing now. So today I'm going to be doing something else than what we said on the last live stream. So what we have decided to do later is to do a commentary with the last movie that we watched, which is Beyond Reanimator, which was, I'm going to go ahead and say it was quite good. Quite good, I'm going to put in quotes, but there are certain things that we need to discuss that has to be compared from the short story itself and also about the other two movies that we also watched. So right now what we're going to read is The Horror at Red Hook, which is also by H.P. Lovecraft and have 7 chapters. So for now, we are going to read the prologue and we're going to read the first chapter. I apologize if I am not pronouncing something right. Usually Nicholas is the one that is correct, that it's doing all of the corrections if I'm pronouncing it wrong or if I'm doing it wrong. But I'm going to try my best, and let's try to get into this and see what we can get from it. So I am going to share the screen. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so as I said, what I am going to read right now is The Horror at Red Hook by H.P. Lovecraft. There are sacraments of evil as well as of good about us, and we live and move, to my belief, in an unknown world, a place where there are caves and shadows and dwellers in twilight. It is possible that man may sometimes return on a track of evolution, and it is my belief that an awful lore is not yet death. By Arthur Machen. The first chapter. Not many weeks ago, on a street corner of the village of Pascoe, Rhode Island, a tall, heavily built, unwholesome-looking pedestrian furnished much speculation by a singular lapse of behavior. He had, it appears, been descending the hill by the road of Chepelet, and encountering the compact section, had turned to his left into the main thoroughfare, where several modest business blocks convey a touch of the urban. At this point, without visible provocation, he committed his astonishing lapse, staring queerly for a second at the tallest of the buildings before him, and then, with a series of terrified, hysterical shrieks, breaking into a frantic run, which ended in a stumble and fall at the next crossing. Picked up and dusted off by ready hands, he was found to be conscious, organically unhurt, and eventually, even evidently cured of his sudden nervous attack. He muttered some shamefaced explanations involving a strain he had undergone, and the downcast glance turned back up the Chepelet road, trudging out of sight without once looking behind him. It was a strange incident to befall so large, robust, normal featured, and capable looking a man, and a strangeness was not less lessened by the remarks of a bystander who had recognized him as a boarder of a well-known dairyman on the outskirts of Chapelgate. He was, it developed, a New York police detective named Thomas F. Malone, now on a long leave of absence under medical treatment after some disproportionately arduous work on a gruesome local case which accident had made dramatic. There had been a collapse of several old brick buildings during a raid in which he had shared, and something about the wholesale loss of life, both of prisoners and of his companions, had peculiarly appalled him. As a result, he had acquired an acute and anomalous horror of any buildings even remotely suggesting the one which had fallen in, so that in the end mental specialists forbade him the sight of such things for an infinite period. A police surgeon with relatives in Chapelgate had put forward that quaint hamlet of wooden colonial police surgeon with relatives. I'm sorry, of wooden colonial houses as an ideal spot for the psychological convalescence. Thither the suffered had gone, promising never to venture among the brick-lined streets of larger villages till Dolly, advised by the wound-socket specialist with whom he was put in touch. This welcome passcode for magazines had been a mistake, and the patient had paid in fright, bruises, and humiliation for his disobedience. So much the gossips of Chapelgate and Passcode knew, and so much also the most learned specialists believe. But Malone had at first told the specialist much more, ceasing only when he saw that utter incredulity was his portion. Thereafter he held his peace, protesting not at all when it has generally agreed that the collapse of certain squalid brick houses in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn and the consequent death of many officers had unseated his nervous equilibrium. He had worked too hard, all said, in trying to clean up those nests of disorder and violence. Certain features were shocking enough in all conscience, and the unexpected tragedy was the last straw. This was a simple explanation which everyone could understand, and because Malone was not a simple person, he perceived that he had better let it suffice. To hint to imaginable people of horror beyond all human conception, a horror of houses and blocks and cities, leprous and cancerous, with evil dragged from elders' worlds, will be merely to invite a padded cell instead of restful rustication, and Malone was a man of sense despite his mysticism. He had the cell's far vision of weird and hidden things, by the logician quick eye for the outwardly unconvincing, an amalgam which had led him far afield in the 42 years of his life, and set him in strange places for a Dublin university man born in a Georgian villa near Phoenix Park. And now, as he reviewed the things he had seen and felt and apprehended, Malone was content to keep unshared the secret of what could reduce a dauntless fighter to a quivering neurotic. What could make old brick slums and seas of dark, subtle faces, I think of nightmare and eldritch portent. It will not be the first time his sensations had been forced to bite on uninterpreted, for was not his very act of plunging into the polyglot abyss of New York's underworld a freak beyond sensible explanation? What could he tell the prosaic of the antique witcheries and grotesque marvels discernible to sensitive eyes amidst the potion cauldron where all the varied dregs of unwholesome ages mix their venom and perpetuate their obscene terrors? He had seen the hellish green flame of secret wonder in this blatant, evasive welter of outward greed and inward blasphemy, and had smiled gently when all the New Yorkers he knew scoffed at his experiment in police work. They had been very witty and cynical, deriding his fantastic pursuit of unknowable mysteries and assuring him that in these days New York held nothing but cheapness and vulgarity. One of them had wagered him a heavy sum that he could not, despite many poignant things to his credit in the Dublin Review, even write a truly interesting story of New York low life. And now, looking back, he perceived that cosmic irony had justified the prophet's words while secretly confuting their flippant meaning. The horror, as glimpsed at last, could not make a story, for like the book sight of Poe's German authority, his last signet lesson, it does not permit itself to be read. Sorry. Well, that's a really interesting first. That's a really interesting first chapter. First, let me have a sip of water. Well, if you ask me, I was expecting a little bit more since the last two stories that we read already, which is Herbert West Reanimator and From Beyond. I think I was expecting a little bit more, but I could see that there is some sort of resources that it's been used by H.P. Lovecraft, of course. For instance, there is something that he's mentioning, like this is like if you have imagined that the terror, then this is the worst. It's even worse than what you could ever imagine, right? So the story, it's centered at someone that it seems like he fell for certain reasons, and then it seems like he had some sort of problems beyond belief, and someone helped him out, and then he just walk again. He's conscious. He's saying that something happened, and then he disappeared, which was a kind of strange, really strange paragraph. But I'm guessing that maybe we can have some sort of information later on in the second chapter. Oh, okay. He was a developed a New York police detective. Okay, I'm guessing that this guy is the one that that's mentioned later, because he said he was. I think I misread it. So it seems like he developed to be a police detective. But what I wanted to like go into the story is that he had some sort of episode that has to do about a place collapsing, and he's thinking about the place itself as being haunted. I mean, I'm feeling that with all of these descriptions about um, there is like leprous and anomalous horror. He's talking about the buildings itself, that it has been fallen. So I am guessing that was, he was detected this mental disorder. I'm guessing maybe he had like some sort of trauma after seeing all of this. It seems like he was like pointed out to be on this like crime scene, and maybe he was like way too like it really impact his life, and that's why he could not get closer to that. What else? It's talking about being neurotic. So I am wondering if, again, as what we have been reading with H.P. Lovecraft, it seems like everything is in your head. And like the last story that we read, which was the short story of Herbert West, Reanimator, and the last chapter, they portrayed the narrator saying that he was crazy. And again, I'm sorry. And again, um, he's using the same resource, let's say it so, for this new character, this actor that is in the story, and he comes out with a mental disorder, or that's what the doctors has been saying, you know. And it's quite strange, but it seems like H.P. Lovecraft is using the same resource. Let me see what else. This is a really short story, which is quite interesting. So I am quite eager to read the next one. I don't know how long it will be. It's not that long. I think maybe we can read the second chapter. There are really short chapters now that I can see it. Um, Let me try and see if there is something else that I wanted to do a like commentary on the first chapter, and then I'm going to jump until the next one. Well, as what we said in the last two stories of H.P. Lovecraft, this story is not like away from what H.P. Lovecraft used, to be honest. He's always like go around in circles trying to explain something, and then in the end he is saying like, whatever you're imagining, it's even worse than that. It's even worse than that. It's like whatever thing you think that it's the terror itself, it's beyond that. It's beyond the terror. So for instance, the last phrase, which I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it correctly because it's German, it says it does not permit itself to be read. So it's something like mischievous or like creepy on that. What else? What else can I rescue from this? I don't think I can get anything else. I'm definitely going to read, I think, the second chapter and see what else can we define from this Thomas F. Malone. So I'm just going to share again my screen so we can actually try and get part of the story because I think that we are missing certain things here. So, okay, let's go here. Second chapter. To Malone, the sense of latent mystery in existence was always present. In youth, he had felt the hidden beauty and ecstasy of things and had been a poet. But poverty and sorrow and exile had turned his gaze in darker directions, and he had thrilled at the imputations of evil in the world around. Daily life had for him come to be a phantasmagoria or macabre shadow studies, now glittering and leering with concealed rottenness, as in best manner, Bertley's best manner, now hinting terrors behind the commonest shapes and objects, as in the subtler, subtler and less obvious work of Gustave Doré. He would often regard it as merciful that most persons of high intelligence jeer at the inmost mysteries. For, he argued, if superior minds were even placed in fullest contact with the secrets preserved by ancient and lowly cults, the resultant abnormalities will soon not only wreck the world, but threaten the very integrity of the universe. All of this reflection was no doubt morbid, but keen logic and a deep sense of humor ably offset it. Malone was satisfied to let his notions remain as half-spied and forbidden visions to be lightly played with, and hysteria came only when duty flung him into a hell of revelation too sudden and insidious to escape. He had for some time been detailed to the Butler Street station in Brooklyn when the Red Hook matter came to his notice. Red Hook is a maze of hybrid squalor near the ancient waterfront opposite Governor's Island, with dirty highways climbing the hill from the wharves to that higher ground where the decayed length of Clinton and Court streets lead off toward the Borough Hall. Its houses are mostly of brick, dating from the first quarter to the middle of the 19th century, and some of the obscure alleys and byways have the luring antique flavor which conventional reading lead us to call Dickensian. The population is a hopeless tangle and enigma. Syrian, Spanish, Italian, and Negro elements impinging upon one another, and fragments of Scandinavian and American belts lying not far distant. It is a babel of sound and filth, and sends out strange cries to answer the lapping of oil waves at its grimy piers and the monstrous organ's litanies of horrible whistles. Here long ago, a brighter picture dwelt, with clear-eyed mariners of the lower streets and homes of taste and substance, where the larger houses line the hill. One can trace the relics of this former happiness in the trim shapes of the buildings, the occasional graceful churches, and the evidence of original art and background in bits of detailed here and there. A worn flight of steps, a battered doorway, a wormy pair of decorative columns or pilasters, or a fragment of once green space with bent and rusted iron railing. The houses are generally in solid blocks, and now and then a many-widowed cupola arises to tell of days when the households of captains and ship owners watched to sea. I'm so sorry about the dog. It's not mine. It's from the neighbor, by the way. Um, and he barks every time that he sees a cat, I guess. From this tangle of material and spiritual putridness, the blasphemies of 100 dialects assail the sky. Hordes of prowlers wheel shouting and singing along the lanes and thoroughfares. Occasional furtive hands suddenly extinguish lights and pull down curtains, and swarthy, sin-pitted faces disappeared from windows when visitors pick their way through. Policemen despair of order or reform and seek rather to erect barriers protecting the outside world from the contagion. The clank of the patrol is answered by a kind of spectral silence, and such prisoners as are taken are never communicative. Visible offences are as varied as the local dialects, and run the gamut from the smuggling of rum and prohibited aliens through diverse stages of lawlessness and obscure vice to murder and mutilation in their most abhorrent guise. That these visible affairs are not more frequent is not to the neighborhood's credit, unless the power of concealment be an art demanding credit. More people enter Red Hook than leave it, or at least than leave it by the landward side, and those who are not loquacious are the likeliest to leave. Malone found in this state of things a faint stench of secrets more terrible than any of the things denounced by citizens and bemoaned by priests and philanthropics. He was conscious, as one who united imagination with scientific knowledge, that modern people were under lawless conditions tend uncannily to repeat the darkness, instinctive patterns of primitive half-ape savagery in their daily life and ritual observances. And he had often viewed with an anthropologist's shudder that the chanting, cursing processions of blear-eyed and pock-marked young men which wound their way along in the dark small hours in the morning. One saw groups one saw groups of this youth incessantly, sometimes in leering vigils on street corners, sometimes in doorways, playing eerily on cheap instruments of music, sometimes in whispering converse around dingy taxicabs, drawn up at the high stoops of crumbling and closely shuttered old houses. They chilled and fascinated him more than he dared confess to his associates on the force, for he seemed to see in them some monstrous thread of secret continuity, some fiendish, cryptical, and ancient pattern utterly beyond and below the sordid mass of facts and habits, the hairs of some shocking and hunts listed with such conscious, conscientious technical care by the police. They must be, he felt unworthy, the hairs of some shocking and primordial tradition, the shatters of debased and broken scraps from cults and ceremonies older than mankind. Their coherence and definiteness suggested it, and it showed in the singular suspicion of order which lurked beneath their squalid disorder. He had not read in vain such treatises as Miss Murray's Witch Cult in Western Europe, and knew that up to recent years there had certainly survived among peasants and furtive folk a frightful and clandestine system of assemblies and orgies, descended from dark religions antedating the Aryan world, and appearing in popular legends as black masses and witches' sabbaths. That these hellish vestiges of old Turanian Asiatic magic and fertility cults were even now wholly dead, he could not for a moment suppose, and he frequently wondered how much older and how much blacker than the very worst of the muttered tales some of them might really be. Well, this is another part of the story, which is the second chapter. And let me tell you, the first three lines, and I'm going to repeat it again because it just makes me feel like I am reading the story of H.P. Lovecraft, or how was living, because he said to Malone the sense of Latin mystery and in existence was always present. So this first line, I think that it could be related to how H.P. Lovecraft was developing his mind. He was reading at really early age, and he was getting all of this information by the books, and he didn't went to school properly. He was studying at home at first, and everything was given to him by the books. And the second part, it says, in youth he had felt the hidden beauty and ecstasy of things and had been a poet. So again, Lovecraft loved to write. I don't think he might have poems, but I think he loved to write, or he liked to write short stories, which in my opinion, they're really good. But it just I think it's reflecting how he is at the moment. Like he knows that there are hidden beauties around, and he's living at that moment the story that what he's always writing, right? He says, but poverty and sorrow and exile had turned his gaze in darker directions, and so just taking a little bit of that part, because not everything is just for Lovecraft, but he wasn't a wealthy guy. He wasn't earning that much. So I'm guessing that he's also saying, like, even though I love all of this and it's a poet, he doesn't have any money, or he's living in poverty. So it's been taken to the dark side, which I don't think that it's actually what happened to Lovecraft, but I think it's like a way of saying, because I am a poet and I am I am poor, I am going to be writing like really dark stories. It might be. I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm trying to think that he might be trying to explain why he's writing this kind of pieces of work, which I think they're really good. I mean, I was expecting a little bit more, to be honest. I mean, this chapter, and we're going to cover it, it's not as the other stories, by the way. So what I wanted to understand, and maybe I need to like reread it, I am guessing that he is investigating into this old city, let's say it so, and they and Lovecraft is really descriptive to where this place is, which is kind of interesting, because he's just saying this place is in this part, and I'm guessing if someone it's from that place, you know, if someone is from that place specific, because it says well, he said that Red Hook is a maze of hybrid squalor near the ancient waterfront opposite to Governance island. He's like really specific with the details, like where is it exactly. So I don't know if I search for something. Okay. I don't know if someone will know exactly where the place is, if it's in Brooklyn actually, but this is really interesting. I wonder if this place exists, or this like direction exist. Um, he's also talking about that these buildings, um, they're made out of brick. It seems like they were built at the first quarter of the middle of the 19th century, which make me believe that this is really old, by the way. And it's also, it has like a mixture of a specific population. So I'm going to bring certain things about my own culture and the ones that it's also mentioned here, which is the Italian one. Those are like my ascendant roots, right? I don't know about the Syrian and the other, like the dark color, because it says that the population is a hopeless tangle and enigma. Syrian, Spanish, Italian, and black color elements impinging upon one another, and fragments of Scandinavian and American belts lying not far distant. So that's that's something that I wanted to rescue. In this case, what I'm feeling is that he wrote that there was a lot of mixing in between cultures, and especially two that I know, which is the Spanish and the Italian, which is like really involved into religion, especially the Spanish one, where they were trying to do the Inquisition, and they were like trying to chase everyone because they were they were misbehaving. And that is something that brings me also with the Italian as well, because we're really close to each other. And I'm guessing the Syrian because in Syria they have like another kind of religion. I wish that Nicholas could be here to not getting it wrong, but I am guessing that for every single culture that he mentioned here, it has something to do with the fact that those cultures involve their own religion to the extreme. And that's why he's bringing it up, because I am thinking, okay, this is a cursed city, or this is a cursed set of buildings. So what kind of people were living in that place? Now you have it. It's like, okay, I know now that it's been cursed because such and such and such people. I'm sorry that I'm bringing religion. I don't attacking anyone. Spanish, by the way. And see how these people that are everything, it's a mixture here, that it can make cool, and that's bringing the dark side. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. It just took me off. the the live stream. That's super strange. Um, okay, but what I was trying to say is that I think that the author um, grabbed all of this mixture of people, like um, in different concepts or of religion. So he's taking like the dark side of everything for it. I think. I mean that's my thought, to be honest. And he's really descriptive about this place because he's saying, okay, I can see that there was a happy time. There was a happy time here. I could see it like in the shapes. I can see it how it has been built, but now it feels that everything is like it's grooming. Is like it feels like um it looks like filth, and there is a sound that it's like strange cries, um and you can hear harbor whistles. But as I said, he is bringing that there were traces or of former happiness, which was like the occasional grateful churches, the original arts and background. Um, there's a lot of things that he's like watching, and it's like remembering, making him to think that there was a happy time, but there was at certain point something that happened, and that's why it just went off. And this phrase, I think back up what I was just saying, is like, from this tangle of material and spiritual putrescence and the blasphemies of 100 dialects assail the sky. So I am feeling that he was just saying that all of these people that had different cultures, they were mixed, and they had like lots of languages that were talking, and no one could actually understand each other. Let me also check on here what I wanted to understand, and I think, as I said, I need to read it again, but they're also mentioning about people going around. I mean, I'm guessing that policemen are going around, people are still there in the buildings, and they're still listening to whatever language they're listening to, and people are just like extinguishing lights, and they're pulling down curtains, and they're just disappearing from the windows every time someone passes through, and they're trying to contain the city from contagion at certain point. I don't know what. Um, and the thing is that every time that they're taking prisoners, they're not communicative, but it depends on the language. There might be certain offenses. Um, but it's really strange how they mixed up the cultures and how they behave, and the way that they are saying that they look like aliens. Let me repeat that. This is, well, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it says visible offenses are as varied as the local dialects and run the gamut from the smuggling of rum and prohibited aliens through diverse stages of lawlessness and obscure vice to murder and mutilation in their most abhorrent guise. Well, it might be because they're like not from the place, and that's why they're saying like that. That's like another way, of course, to say it. Which another part which is interesting, it says more people enter Red Hook than leave it, or at least than leave it by the landward side, and those who are not loquacious are the likeliest to leave. And that's really interesting. That's really interesting. Hmm? I wonder why they are not leaving. So then again, we have the same character, or we're portraying the same character as how Lovecraft did for Herbert West. So I can tell that Malone itself is getting involved into this let's say police case, because he's more interested in know what's going to happen. Like he is saying here, he said he was conscious as one who united imagination with scientific knowledge, that mother people, unless under lawless conditions, tend to uncannily to repeat the darkness, instinctive patterns of primitive half-ape savagery in their daily life and ritual observance. And he had often viewed with an anthropologist's shudder the chanting, cursing processions of bleared-eyed and pockmarked youth men, which wound their way across in the dark, small hours in the morning. So, I mean, I can believe that he liked this kind of acts, and he wasn't like, I mean, he was onto it. He was observant than trying to like to really observant. He was analyzing all of this. It says another part. It says they chilled and fascinated him more than he dared confess to his associates on the force, for he seemed to see in them some monstrous thread of secret continuity, some fiendish, cryptical, and ancient pattern utterly beyond and below the sordid mass of facts and habits and haunts listed with such consciousness, technical care by the police. So in this case, he's actually saying that he liked what he's watching. And I'm feeling that Lovecraft is giving me the same description as in Herbert West Reanimator. So for the people that haven't listened to that story, I recommend you to go. Oh, by the way, I'm just being so rude here. I'm just going to like post this link, which is the story. If people want to watch it, I'm so sorry I didn't post it like at first. But the thing is that I think that he is trying to explain. I mean, he's trying to explain how this actor is in the story, and I'm feeling that he's giving me some sort of description as Herbert West. So, who is Herbert West? You think it is part of this of the last short story that we read? It was a scientist. Well, it was a doctor slash scientist that wanted to try and create life from the dead. But in this case, he was trying to, after like being being successful and bringing someone or bringing a corpse to life, he was wondering things beyond that question. So he was like, okay, can I see if they have memories, or can I disconnect the body from, I mean, the body from the brain, and can I make limbs that can regenerate itself? So he had so many questions, and I'm feeling that he's actually trying to explain this character similar to Herbert West, because Herbert West wasn't even like surprised but what he was doing because he had so many fails, but it makes it seems like it's like the same character, the same kind of character that he's using. So I'm really intrigued, especially because this is not a scientific thing. It seems like it's mostly directed for the religious part than to investigate itself in a laboratory. So I'm guessing that he's going to get into that point at certain part of the story. Um, Let me try and see what else. So he's saying here he had not read in vain such treatises as Miss Murray's Witch Cult in Western Europe. So I'm going to really like again say it. Miss Murray's Witch Cult in Western Europe. So I'm guessing that this is a story that has to do with how cults for for things like witches and stuff like that were really well known in Western Europe, and how they were chased and how people were, even though they were innocent, they were chased until they were dead. So it's like being religious, but in the extreme part of the religion. And I don't want, as I said before, I don't want to cover anything that will have to do with religion, because I am not forcing anyone um, on it, by the way. But that's how the author is bringing it up. I think that it's interesting to watch, to see that he's using certain things just to make us go through the story and disconnect ourselves from the scientific part, or trying to explain it in a scientific way, and going into the really deep, dark side of religion. And he's also saying that he knows because in the recent years there have been certainly survived among peasants and forty folk a frightful and clandestine system of assemblies and orgies descended from dark religions antedating the Aryan world and appearing in popular legends as black masses and witches' Sabbaths. So again, this is all brought up by a mixture of cultures and a mixture of cults, specifically the witch cult that comes from dark religions. So I'm guessing that this is keeping him on this case, and that's why he is like more into it. He really wants to go into what's going on. And I am really looking forward on knowing on the third chapter what's going to happen. I'm guessing that they're going to still be like investigating more of these buildings. Let me see if there is something that I wanted to like bring up. Um, No, I think not. I mean, I'm glad that these are like really short stories. They're like shorter than the Herbert West Reanimator stories that we read before, and I could read like the two chapters without any problem. I think it's just like if I was reading one chapter from the Herbert West Reanimator, it will be two short stories from this one. Yeah, they're really short. They're really short. They're like maybe 5 or 6 paragraphs, and then they jumped into the next chapter. And the difference in between I may say, I need to investigate, by the way, but it made me feel that he wrote this story from beginning till end. He didn't have any time to do a summarize, just like he did in Herbert West Reanimator. He had six little chapters, which in every single chapter he was explaining, he was doing a summary in the first paragraph. But in this one, because the chapters doesn't have any name, it seems like he is not summarizing anything, and he is actually following just just going with the flow of the story since the beginning, which is quite interesting. And I think he had some other stories like this that he's just following it and he's not explaining, um, which I think it's much better. Even though the last short story you can divide it for every single chapter, and that wasn't. I mean, you can follow every chapter without reading the first one. So I think that's great. And here, I think it will take us a little while to understand what he's talking about. He didn't use that, but I'm guessing that this is the way that he liked to write, or he liked to write, because on Herbert West Reanimator, he actually didn't like the way he wrote it. So, which is interesting. So, I think that's it for now. So, at the moment, just to do like a small summary, we read two chapters of the story, The Horror at Red Hook by H.P. Lovecraft. And if you're going to keep on the video until here, I am really grateful. I really enjoyed the story. As I said, I think I am missing some of the things that were given in the short stories that I already read. I think those are really good. Maybe I think I need to start reading the other ones, I mean, the other chapters, to check on the story, because it's taking a long while to explain what's going to happen. And I think that it's going to go into the myths and, like paranormal activities. I think that's something that will keeps us cling to the story, or hook to the story. So I think that's it. I think I'm going to leave it there, because if we keep on reading on the third chapter, it's going to take us quite a long time. So let's leave it there. I'm going to continue on Tuesday. So for now, I am thankful for anyone that is going to be watching this live stream. I really wish that if anyone has something to say on the live stream, if there is someone that wants to comment about the story, I already linked the well, I put the link in the comment section. Well, right now I just put it, I think it was like maybe 5 or 10 minutes ago. So you can actually follow the story if you wanted to read it. It's public. You can access to it. So I hope to see you guys on Tuesday, or I hope you guys see this live stream and get to know that I'm going to be doing another live stream on Tuesday following this story, until Nicholas can come back and again catch up with the whole story of Herbert West Reanimator short story versus the 3 movies that we watched already. So, as I said, I am Pat. This is my channel. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to click on the notification bell. Follow me on all of the social media that I have linked in the banner. And don't forget that we're going to be here every Tuesday around the same time. Thank you, and I hope to see you guys soon.